Okay. Okay. Hey guys. Hey. Hi. Just want to say hi.
I can't say too much as yet, but I'm going to be spending a lot more time in here with you lot, because I love it in here. I fucking love it!
Time between I think I should do this thing and beginning doing it, and you will change the world because you will change how you see it.
Biggest risk to your future isn't your competition. It's the distractions you insist on keeping in your life rather than doing the things you know you should be doing but aren't. People delay doing things they don't like for longer than it takes to do them.
There have been so many times in my life where I knew I needed to do something, and then I filled all this extra time not doing that thing. And then the moment I did it, I was like, wow, that took way less time than I thought it was going to take. And not only that, it took way less time than it took me to delay to actually get to this point. And if I had only started with just doing what I was supposed to do, I could have done 4 or 5 other things that I was also supposed to do by this exact same point. And so thinking about it from that perspective, I've tried to eliminate as much time between I think I should do this thing and beginning doing it. And I think you get this positive reinforcement cycle that occurs every time you start. I call it pulling the thread. It's like, I just need to start pulling the thread. And then all of a sudden what feels really unknown becomes very tangible. And you're like, oh, I understand the 6 problems I have to solve to do this big thing. But now I know the problems. And then it feels like you can wrap your arms around it. And then you can start taking it one bite at a time.
That's really good. I'm going to give this 4 big booms on the boom meter.
Groves says there are so many people working so hard and achieving so little. And that's the lack of correlation between inputs and outcomes.
Yeah. I think the vast majority of business owners, I come from the business perspective, the vast majority of business owners work a fair amount. They just work on the wrong stuff and they do it the wrong way. And so they get so little for their effort that they wonder when they're at home empty-handed in bed, why isn't this working when I am working? But if you define work, at least the way I do, which is output. So I define work by output. And in order to get output, it's volume times leverage. So how many times you do the thing times how much you get for each time you do it. And so that is do you work smart or do you work hard? It's you do both. You do as many reps as you possibly can, and you do it with the most leverage possible. So if I make 100 phone calls, the leverage that I can have there would be how skilled I am. So if I make 100 calls, I might get 10 times more. And so I worked more. I had more output than somebody who has less skill. But the only way you get skilled is by doing more inputs, by working more. And so it's this virtuous cycle of doing more and getting better, and then you get more for what you do.
Yeah. Magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding all the time. Every single time that we're not making progress in this way, what is the highest pain task that's in front of me that I've put off the most? It's always that one. It always is. You know, after you spend enough time thinking about work and deconstructing the way that you piece your day and your life together, you sometimes believe that the answer is still out there, and what you actually realize is that you've already learned it. And it's like, it's that quote or that insight or that book. It's one of the first books you read, because all of the big insights from productivity and personal development are the lowest hanging fruit. They're the ones that are repeated across the most books because they're the most reliable, scalable, and robust. It's like, yeah. I don't need to be looking out there for most of the new insights. They're just shit that I already learned. Things are not what they are. Things are what we think they are. For instance, you're doing a hard workout, which gives you a signature feeling. You're laid on the floor, panting, heart rate at 180, sweating from everywhere with the taste of metal in your mouth. This is oddly enjoyable. But if this exact same sensation was to spontaneously occur in your car while sat in traffic, you'd call an ambulance for fear that you're having a heart attack. Framing is everything. Yeah. Rory Sutherland says, sometimes you just want to stand in the corner and stare out of the window. The problem is, when you're not smoking and staring out of the window, you're an antisocial, friendless idiot. If you stand and stare out of the window with a cigarette, you're a fucking philosopher. The power of reframing things cannot be overstated. It's significantly easier to find a way to reframe your experiences as enjoyable while you improve them, rather than waiting for them to be done before you give yourself license to be happy.
And that was when I kind of refined my kind of theory of living for me, which is that hard work is the goal. And so it's not like work hard so that X, Because as soon as you have a so that, then the X is the thing. But if the goal is to work as hard as you possibly can, then the only real output we have is who we become along the way. And so in reframing that, then it's something that I can win or measure myself against every day in real time throughout the day, which is how hard am I working? Because that is the goal. And then even I say this just for audio, but like everything else takes care of itself, still puts the everything else as the goal still. It's just being vaguer. But if you just say like, the only point is working hard, because I know that whatever I'm going to get is stuff that I will become accustomed to. And the, I guess, opposite of the hedonic treadmill is like the resilience piece, is that my ability to work hard itself is growable. And so I just need to keep my RP, my rate of perceived exertion, at 8 or 9 or 10, because I know that when I look back on my life, the days that I loved the most were days when I had nothing left in the tank. And there's this thing that Jesse Itzler has this, and I love it. I hate him for having it because it's so fucking good. But he taught us to his kids, which is they have a little zero, means that there's nothing left in the tank. And when they finish a race or they do whatever, it's like, did you leave anything in the tank? And I thought about that, and the best days of my life were ones when I had nothing left in the tank. And so then the goal becomes to empty the tank, not where I drive, but just to drive the car as hard as I possibly can. And that means that in the beginning, it's just straightaways and just seeing how high I can rev the engine. But as I become more advanced, it's like, all right, well, now we've got turns, and then it's turns in elevation, and then it's turns in elevation without guard.
This is kind of the pushback against victimhood culture, that externalizing the locus of control, it is the fault of the politics or the economy, or it's the state of the dollar, or it's the patriarchy, or it's whatever. And he goes, hey, look, you will get 100x, 1000x your returns, placing your efforts to try and change those things on you as opposed to on the world. I think basically the best way to move through the world is to see your entire surroundings as immutable and you as mutable. You're the only mutable thing in the entire world. You're the only thing that can change. Everybody else, people, opinions, places, economy, politicians, policies, all of that, none of that's going to change. You can change. That's it. And then maybe some of the other stuff does, and that'd be great.
It's a really interesting concept. So do we accept the world and change ourselves, or do we change the world and accept ourselves? And so it's a really interesting dichotomy when you ask the question, because both of those sound right. You're like, I should accept myself and change the world. But on the other hand, you're like, wait, no, I should accept the world and change myself.
Yeah.
And so, because they're both pithy. Pithy
aphorism porn.
Right. And so I think all of it comes down to, when you change yourself, you will change the world, because you'll change how you see it. It's rarely the information or the intensity that makes things hard. It's the sticking with it that makes it hard. And so the desire that we have to quit is simply breaking the consistency. And so that's why consistency has always been the hardest thing for most people to achieve. But the intensity of what you have to do to be successful is much lower than most people expect. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes they suffer significantly more in a short period of time than is required to be successful over a much longer period of time with a much lower intensity. And so it's just like, if you walk for 5 minutes a day, you're going to get, 50% of the health benefits, probably more than that, I'm sure, of just even exercising. You add 10 years to your life if you walked 5 or 10 minutes a day. And the path of personal development is befriending uncertainty. And so I obviously sit from the entrepreneurial perspective, but almost all decisions that you make in the beginning, you have incomplete data and you have to make decisions anyways. And so it's growing comfortable with taking your best bad guess and being directionally correct rather than searching for a perfect answer, because a perfect answer assumes perfect information, which you can only have after you begin. And so in some ways, making a decision is the perfect answer so that you can get the information.
Feedback.
to then improve the quality of the decision later. And I think that one loop is what a lot of people miss out on, is they obsess for years sometimes on the perfect pick, the perfect business, the perfect job, the perfect mate, when most of the times beginning each step illuminates the next step, which means the information, the feedback that you get from walking gives you more about where to walk than trying to sit at the beginning in the darkness and pick it. So I think about everything in terms of skills, and I have more or less divorced myself from the words like feelings, psychology, intuition, whatever. I've just taken it out of my vocabulary and character traits, and tried to focus ruthlessly on what are the actions that I can take to become patient. And if you say, hey, be patient, what does someone do, right? They have to figure out what to do in the meantime. That's the definition of patience. If you say, hey, be more charismatic, the problem with that directive is that it's a bundled term. And so I say charismatic, but what it really means is 12 skills underneath of it. That means that when you walk into a room, stand up straight. When you walk into a room, look everyone in the eyes. When you walk into a room, announce yourself, speak louder, shake people's hands and look at them while they're talking. When someone talks, nod your head. If you do all of these 12 behaviors or 15 behaviors, people will begin to describe you as charismatic. And in the path of personal development, we want to become more of these things, but we haven't chunked down the bundled term into the series of behaviors that create the description that people will then call us later. And I think by breaking things down, then it's not like, oh, I'm just not that insert character trait. It's really, oh, I have not mastered these 12 skills. Yeah. And so by doing that, it demystifies.
And that's one of the things that I appreciate is anybody that spends enough time crafting words and thinking about them precisely ends up having a very accurate view of the world, because all of the fluffiness that comes about, we mediate our experience through language. And then what? You've got a shit-eating grin on your face.
Oh, I've just got so many.
Okay, well, pick one of your favorites.
I'll do three of them. Two of them that are interrelated, and then a third one. All right. So this will be really good. This will be nasty for the people who are listening at home. So learning means same condition, new behavior. So phone rings. You answer the phone, you say ABC. I say, cool, read this script instead that says DEF. Phone rings, same condition. You say DEF, you have learned. Same condition, new behavior. Intelligence is rate of learning. It's speed. It's a measurement of speed. And so it means how many times do you need to be exposed to the same condition in order to change your behavior? If I teach someone something, that script, and then on the first try, they say DEF, and someone else, it takes 5 tries for them to say DEF, they are not as intelligent as the first person. Here's why this is interesting. Every person who's listening to this right now has listened to 1,000 fucking podcasts, and they're in the exact same condition, and yet they have not changed their behavior, which means 1, they have not learned, and 2, they are dumb. I'd say one of the strongest mental frames that has gotten me through my hardest times is thinking this will be the story that I will one day tell. And that means the harder it is, the bigger the dragon, the more epic the story, and by consequence, the more epic the hero. And if you think about the difference between winners and losers, winners define themselves by what they made happen, and losers define themselves by what happened to them. And the difficult part of the lonely chapter is that the Rocky cutscene lasts 90 seconds in the movie and lasts 5 years in reality.
With no promise of it ever ending. No guarantee of glory.
What's interesting about, and I don't like using the word psychology, but I'll say what's interesting about humans is that our ability to endure is very robust if we know that we'll make it out. And so they've done mice studies where they drop the mouse in and then they let it drown and it drowns really fast. and then they drop a mouse in, and then before it gets to the point where it drowns, they pick it up, and then they put it back in. And the second time they put it in, it can last like 20 times longer.
I think for the stats is something around will drown in less than an hour. If it's taken out, dried off, and allowed to relax, it'll swim for a day.
An absurd amount different. And so if I were to say, hey, I need you to hold your breath, but I don't tell you how long, 20 seconds in, you might be thinking, this is stupid. Is he going to stop? Is he going to wait for me to pass out? And all these stupid thoughts go into your mind. But if I say, I need you to hold your breath for 3 minutes, your lungs might burn, but you can see that there's this end that's coming. I'm a hyper proponent of one single narrow focus. I'll define 2 more terms since the audience didn't ask for it. Sadness is a perceived lack of options. It's why it feels like hopelessness, because you don't know what to do. You don't know what options are available. You see none, which is why it feels like there's no way out. Anxiety is many options but no priorities, which is why you feel scattered but you can't decide. They feel very different, but fundamentally, those are the difference in the conditions that make people feel like they're anxious or they feel like they're sad. And so when we're working through what you were just talking about with, okay, I want to be gym guy and I also want to be work guy, we have many options, but a lack of priorities. And so we have anxiety over the fact that we're not making progress on any of them because we have not been able to say, this comes first. And so if we think about what priority means, it means prior. It comes before everything else. And what I think a lot of people have a hard time doing is being okay with saying no and saying, okay, I will allow myself to just not get fatter rather than get fitter during this period. And what's interesting about most skills is that the amount of effort that it takes to maintain a skill versus the amount of effort it takes to grow a skill is like 1/10
Correct.
the amount of effort. And so this is where the effort arbitrage is so important in terms of allocation. And so if you do a 4 out of 10 on 10 things, you will make progress on none. You will make the same amount of progress that you could have made if you just did 1 out of 10, which is none. You just don't regress. But the extra 3 points that you save on the 9, you could put on one other item and have a 10 out of 10 or a 13 out of 10 in effort.